Hi up, how do? Thank you very much for stopping by. And in this video we're going to check out this really awesome custom knife from a master craftsman by the name of Steve Skiff. This is his Accomplice model, but unfortunately it's not my Accomplice. It was sent to me by a buddy out of Singapore. I've recently done some work for him. I'm going to be doing some more work for him, and he sent me this knife as a thank you, as well as a spinner, to just say thank you for the work I'd done for him. I don't have the spinner anymore. My youngest son has nicked that. But I got to check out the Accomplice. I am on Steve's books, so I was really looking forward to having a look at this. Now the thing is, I think this mate of mine has kind of taken the piss out of me a little bit. I think he's taken advantage of my goodwill, because when this knife arrived, he said, look, you know, I think he's getting like 4 or 5 custom knives from Steve this year. So he said, look, I'm not using this thing at the moment. I've carried it. Please check it out. It arrived. He said it's going to have some scuffs on it, and it did. Boy, did it. The pivots were worn down and going purple and going through to the bare metal. The liners were all worn down, going purple through to the bare metal. There were scratches all over the top here, and then the clip was also mega scratched up as well, all around here. Loads of scratches, carry marks. I mean, you know, horrible scratches. So I hated the way that it looked. So being the great guy that I am, I sorted it out free of charge. So I polished and redid the pivots for him, re-anodized. I removed the scratches on the liners and then re-anodized the liners. So they're all beautiful now. Everything's nice and blue again. No more purples or, you know, going through to the metal underneath, the silver underneath. And then I put a new satin finish on the clip. It was already satin finished, of course, so just add a new satin finish, remove the scratches, and now it's like brand new again. So this thing is just amazing. It's such a great looking knife. Really well engineered. Beautifully designed. Great action, great sound. There's not much to nitpick about this knife. There's a couple of things, and we'll get to those. But let's just talk about the great things about this knife. Just the wonderful aspects of Steve's work. Because he is a pure craftsman, without a shadow of a doubt. Look at this blade. How fine is that? And I'm not just talking about it's fine. I'm talking about, look at how fine the hand rub satin is. He has used a high grit on that. I don't know, I mean, I would say, what, 1,000? 800? 1,200? Something like that? I don't know, maybe more. Beautiful, fine hand rub satin on the grinds, on the swedge, and then polished on the flats. You got my fingerprints there, but you get what I mean. And then polished on the spine as well. I cannot find fault with this blade at all. It's perfectly ground on both sides, which means it sits perfectly in the blade, in the handle, should I say, excuse me. Yeah, there's nothing you can say about that blade. It's just beautiful. The handles, also amazing. Look at these bolsters. They are, whether you want to call it a fine orange peel or an eggshell, it's just beautifully done. Look at that. I have had 2 knives where I asked the makers, custom makers, to put orange peels on the titanium bolsters, and both times they were awful. Awful done. Awful. Awful. I just hated them. You could see scratches underneath from the sandpaper. There were blotches where there was no orange peel at all. It was inconsistent. Round the ends, you could see nothing at all. They hadn't gone to the end. It was just terrible. Absolutely terrible. And that's the problem with orange peel. If there's a slight discrepancy anywhere where it's not the same as the place next to it. It's not the same finish throughout. Your eye goes to the place where there's a discrepancy, where there's an inconsistency, and it looks terrible, and it ruins the look of the material, okay, of the bolster or whatever you're orange peeling. But when you do it like Steve does it, you can't complain because it's done perfectly. Look at that. It goes to the ends. Everywhere is finished. Everything is the same. There's no discrepancies. Look at that. Perfect. There's not many times you can say perfect on a knife from that many makers, but believe me, Steve is one of those makers where you can actually say that word and mean it. Perfect blade, perfect bolsters, perfect scales. Look at that material. Carbon fibre with the blue as well. It's kind of blue and black carbon fibre. No voids, no scratches from sanding it down. Just beautifully polished up. The transition between the materials is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And at the ends as well. Look at that. Perfect. Just damn perfect. Even the transition between the liners and the material. I like to move my nail up and down to see if you can feel any material. And I've had this knife apart, obviously. Putting it back together, you know, you have to fine tune it. Because you can get it where, you know, you can feel a nick or whatever. But if you fine tune this thing, which I have done, and screwed it down, really, it's, I would say, 98.9%. There's a couple of little places where you feel like a slight discrepancy, but it's so minuscule. This thing is just amazing. The clip is well done. It's well machined. Everything is well finished. Amazing. I just can't say enough good things about this knife. So let's say some bad things. Why the hell not, eh? I like to be honest. I like to talk the truth. So let's just talk about a couple of issues with this knife, okay? Just a couple. I mean, the action, it's not full on its own. I think it's got a ceramic detent ball, and that you see that. I mean, I've tried. I've lubed it up. It's just, yeah. That's not really a complaint. It's, you know, I'm just pointing that out. But the things that are wrong with this knife, the flipper has a bit of sharpness to it right at the end there, which can become irritating to the finger if you keep flicking it, and you feel it. You do feel it. Other areas that are sharp are the inside of the liners. They have not been chamfered or rounded off, and they're sharp. There's no relief on the inside here of the lock bar. Makers usually put like a deep chamfer or mill a pocket in there or something. This is just completely 90 degrees and it's sharp. Now luckily the lock bar isn't heavy. It's not a tough thing to disengage, but if it had lock stick or it was a heavy, you know, liner lock, that would really hurt your thumb to push that over. But yes, the insides of the liners on the inside edge, they're sharp. Not as sharp as some I've felt, but they've still got an edge to them. What that means is that when you grip the knife and you squeeze, wherever your skin kind of goes inside of the liners, you can feel it. You can feel the sharpness. So yeah, it kind of, you get it. You know, it does hurt. So yeah, I mean, it's a small issue. It's something that you could rectify if you wanted to. I mean, if I wanted to, I could take this apart. I could just get a bit of sandpaper and just knock the edge off. It wouldn't make a difference to the look of the knife whatsoever. And then you could just, obviously it'd make it silver, and then you could just re-anodize it. And yeah, that'd go away. If it was my knife, I would do that myself. I would actually do that. But I think I've done enough free work on this knife, so I'm not doing any more. So yeah, so that's a couple of little issues. And then one more, and it's something you always see with handmade knives, is the difference between the scales and the bolsters. What I'm talking about is at the ends here. If you look, there's always some difference. Okay, some makers get it better than others. Steve's done a pretty good job, I've got to admit. You know, as you can see, it starts off thin at the ends there, and then this one kind of bulges out. And this one doesn't go as far, it's a lot thinner as it goes up. Can you see that? That one's thinner there, and it's much kind of thicker on this side, the material. You got to remember that these are hand-shaped. So as it gets to the top there, it's thicker on that side, it's thinner on this side. And then as you go down, this is consistent in pretty much its thickness, and this one kind of bulges out here, it gets thicker here. Can you see that? It's kind of thinner here, and it kind of bulges a bit there, it waves a little bit. It's very, very subtle, but if you look, you notice it. See here, it's thicker on this side, and it's thinner here. See how much thinner it is here? So as it comes down, it gets thinner, thinner, thinner. This one basically stays the same thickness as it comes down. What that means as it gets to the bolster on this side is thinner and it's thicker on that side. Okay. You see that? Just very, very slight, just differences, just little tiny differences that you notice when you look. Now for me, this is absolutely, absolutely acceptable. It's not perfect, that's one part of the knife that isn't perfect, where it's exactly the same on both sides. But how can you make it perfect if it's handmade? Yes, if you CNC in the materials, of course. But when you're doing it eye and hand, and using, machines, your grinders and your sanders and all that kind of stuff, yeah, it's going to be difficult, isn't it, to make it absolutely spot on both sides. But he's done a pretty good job. You can see it on this side here, it's thicker and it's much, much thinner here. You see that? See how thin it is there and how much thicker it is on that side? But it's not noticed. It's not something when you're playing with a knife and you're messing with a knife that you notice. I had one knife recently where it was super thin on one side, the carbon fibre, and the other side was ridiculously fat. I mean, so noticeable. I mean, you just could notice it, and it was so annoying that I had to sell the knife. I had to get rid of it. But this one actually, overall, it's almost there. You can see here, you can see how it's thinner on this side and thicker on that side. Yeah, it's just, it's just part and parcel of handmade. Overall, I would say this knife is, I would say, 90% perfect. If you take into consideration, the sharpness to the liners, you take into consideration the discrepancy in the thickness of the materials, you take into account the sharpness to the flipper tab. Yes, okay, I think I'm being a little bit too harsh there. Let's say 95% perfect, 95%. And to be honest, if you just rounded that off yourself and sorted out the liners, you would be close to 98% perfect. So I mean, that's not a bad going. It's not bad going for a custom knife, especially within Steve's price range. We're not talking about a knife from a custom maker who's charging $20,000. I believe this knife is under $1,000. Now this is his standard model. With these standard materials, so you'll see this knife a few times in this configuration, exactly the same. That would mean it's not a knife I would own or commission, because I always want something one of a kind, which you can get from Steve, of course, but he does make a standard model, and I have no idea what the price is. I don't know if it's $600, $700, $800, but whatever, even $1,000, this thing is way worth it for that price. There are some makers out there who would easily, for this quality of work, charge $2,000. So Steve is a real gentleman, who prices fairly. Absolutely fairly. And if you can get on his books, I suggest you do, because he has got talent. Real talent. Real magic in those hands for sure. Great ergonomics. I think the knife looks incredible. It's got a really cool profile to it. I just hope when my name comes up later this year, I've got the funds. I am due to be having spinal surgery soon. I have no idea, even if I'm going to be alive. But if I am alive and I'm okay, then I'm going to damn well make sure that I have some funding for this baby, because I want to do something special, one of a kind, and really get a really nice accomplice. So impressed. I would definitely have a backspacer as well. Did I mention that these are beautiful blue standoffs, titanium standoffs? Really nice. But for me, I'm a backspacer guy, so I'd definitely go with a backspacer. But overall, yes, stunning. Absolutely stunning knife. If you can get one, get it. If you can get on his books, do it. I think that's me done for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And until the next one, until we... I was going to say it again, you know what? in my last video, I said, I let it slip out, I went, until we meet again. But that's tactical saying. I don't know if you've ever seen his channel. Really cool dude. But yeah, I can't even believe I'm saying that. No, I need my own saying. So I don't know what that might be. I know what it'll be. Let's get together again soon. All right, guys, I'll check you later. See ya.